Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Oner podcast, the podcast where we break down and review films all in one big, long, unbroken take. I'm Austin Archer, and with me, as always, is my childhood next-door neighbor and lifelong best friend,
Kramer, England.
This week, we're talking about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. What else? We're the last ones to the party, as usual. And what a stinker of a movie.
Yeah. Oh my, wow.
This
so
thing
horrible. Everyone was right.
This thing is so woke and just like boring and basic. Dad, I'm sorry, the word dad is in the get out of here.
Yeah.
Get out of here with that trash. Just kidding for anyone who immediately skipped off the video.
Yeah.
We really like it.
We'll see the drop-off point in the numbers just go down
immediately. All right, skipping this
or they'll
video.
go up. You never know.
Yeah, I'm wearing the format because
nice.
Everything in this movie is all about the format. It's about what format did you watch it in? Did you watch it in IMAX? Did you watch it in 35 millimeter? Tomorrow I'm going to see it in IMAX 70 millimeter. Very excited. You got to see a 70 millimeter print.
I did.
Yes. Yeah, I've already seen it in IMAX and in Dolby. And now,
nice.
Yeah. So
nice. I'm going to see it again next week. I'm going to take my boys to see it. So I saw it on 70 millimeter. I was in Las Vegas for a concert, and it just so happened to be that I was there, and I went and saw it in 70 millimeter. It was one of my all-time favorite theater going experiences. It was unreal how good it looked, which I'm excited for you to see it. You got to text me after you see it tomorrow and let me know what you thought. But now I'm gonna go see it in a different format because I still love the story, but the 70 millimeter was just amazing. And I said this in my first thoughts. A lot of people don't know why 70 millimeter is so, what's the big deal? Well, there's a big deal about 4K, right? Like if something's in 4K, wow, that's good. 70 millimeter comes out to be around 16K. So it's 4 times better than 4K. Like
there's also just this like nostalgic thing where if you grew up when we grew up, a lot of kids don't know this. They don't really, people who were born past 2005 don't really have a frame of reference for this. But when you go and sit down and the film projector starts up and you start watching trailers that are projected on film and then the Universal logo comes up at the top of the movie, your brain immediately goes, oh yeah, this is what all of the movies I watched as a kid in theaters looked like. I just forgot they were all projected on film. And
and it is something that it's just there's little imperfections which make it really cool. Like there was some dust, a little bit of some of that, and it makes it really interesting because it's not lines, it's not pixels, it's not dots, it's something that is physical,
it's something that's
tangible.
On the actual film that is that's showing up as the light passes through it, that you're seeing that.
And I watched Chris Stuckman's review, which was great, and he said the same thing that you said. It's like he had forgotten, and I had the exact same experience. It came out and I was like, oh my gosh, like I haven't seen something like this in years, and this is so amazing to see an actual projection. Like it's just something, and it's probably more nostalgic for our generation, but honestly, it's just it'll be really cool, I think, even for the younger generation. I'm sure that they will be able to tell a difference, and I think they will be able to enjoy it just as much. So
I really like I went and saw Disclosure Day in 35 millimeter, and I sat down and I was like, I wonder if I'm going to be able to tell the difference. And the second the projector fired up, I was like, oh cool. I was like, oh yeah. And you'll notice it if you have a chance to go see this in 35 millimeter or in 70 millimeter. I promise you will notice. I think our general. I also want to point out that my hat is in honor of Matt Damon. It says "Wicked Smart." It's a Boston hat. Smart. It's a Boston hat, and nice. Our boy Matty.
How about
Damon,
them apples?
Yeah, how about them apples? He speaks in a thick South Boston accent the entire film. It's really, it's
really kind of weird.
it doesn't match what everyone else is doing, but it's very cool.
Yeah, it works perfectly.
No, I mean, but if you're listening to the online chatter, you might think that that's what's going on, but that's not what's going on.
Not gonna lie though, those things that they say like, "Oh, I loved it when he said this," those are actually pretty funny.
Those are funny.
Those
I
are,
like.
those are pretty great.
Yeah, you know, like somebody was like I don't know, I thought the dialogue was okay, but I didn't like when he was leaving the Cyclops' cave and he turned around and he said like, "You ought to see this," and he like, or it was like someone's
like, "About them apples, yeah,
get Odyssey," you know, like.
So I saw one. It was like, I liked it, but then when he plucked his bow, everyone was like, "Oh no, that's Jason Bourne."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty great. That's
oh my God, that's Jason Bourne.
Yeah. So funny.
That's awesome.
Whoever made that comment, I liked it. It was amazing. It was great.
I think suffice it to say, for our general thoughts, we really like this movie. I said on Letterboxd, I said, if you're not going to call this a masterpiece, I don't know what you're going to call a masterpiece. If this isn't a 5-star film, I don't know what is. And that's my feeling about it. Is it's just like, it doesn't get a whole lot better than this when it comes to pure filmmaking craft. And that's my personal general assessment of the film.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot to get through with this one. So we're going to start out this week with lowest lows because we have a lot more highest highs than we do lowest lows.
Yeah.
But it's not like if we wanted to get nitpicky with this, you can always find something to
for sure
criticize. And again, I feel like this movie is going to age very well. I think that a lot of the problems that people have right now, things that are hitting their ear weird, or choices with the lighting that they didn't particularly like the first time they watched it, I think these things are going to age well. As I feel like the way that Nolan's films are set up non-linearly and the way that they're edited, sometimes the first viewing can just be a lot. It is a lot coming at you, and you're jumping back and forth from different timelines. And the more you watch it, like watching the amount of, I've seen The Prestige 6 or 7 times, and every time I see it, it feels like I'm seeing it just a little bit more clear. And I'm just seeing every little piece a little more clearly and a little more clearly. And I think that's how this film will go too.
Yes. And that's one of the things that makes Christopher Nolan movies so amazing, is that they reward you on rewatch. And that's, and I totally agree. The first time you watch a movie of Christopher Nolan's, it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, I just got to take it in. It's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. And then the second time is almost a different experience where you notice more and you pick up more and you realize, oh, that's setting up this, or this means that. And then as you go on, like we said, when we watched The Prestige, we still were getting new information, finding out new things. And that's what I totally agree. This movie is going to reward you every time you rewatch it, because you're going to find little things that you notice and little details that will make it even a little bit more deep, right? Or make you appreciate it in a little bit different way.
Yeah, and I just say that as like a caveat to be like, these critiques right here for our lowest lows, they might be something that it doesn't bother me as much in later down the road. And also like this is like me getting as nitpicky as I can. The only one I have about the film itself, and I think that this is where a lot of modern film critique, what it comes down to, and I think just art critique in general throughout history, is this gap between expectation and execution. And we talk about this a lot on the channel, about trying to evaluate the film that was made, not the film that you think should have been made. But I'm not immune to this. It's impossible for us to not have expectations for something. Even as much as we try, we have, especially if it's a known property that's being adapted and it's a filmmaker that we've seen before, that we're familiar with, like, we can't help but have expectations. If there are actors on screen that we've seen in other things, we just have certain vibes and tones and ideas that we can't help but like project onto up there and go, oh, I wish they would have done it this way, or I think it's the gap between I thought they were going to do this and they did this instead. And I have to get over being disappointed with the fact that they made a different choice than I thought they were going to make. And I think that's so this one thing for me is like, I loved this whole movie. I loved all of the action set pieces. There's so much being said online about the third act of this film and how good and satisfying the third act is.
Right.
Once by the way, this is our spoiler review. If you haven't seen the film, we're talking
Yes.
spoilers. So
Spoilers
from
spoiler warning now. Yes.
from this point forward, you can watch our spoiler-free review over on the channel right now. Once he plucks that bow and lets all the suitors know that they're about to die, and that he is Odysseus and he has returned. I felt myself getting really hyped up, especially when Corey, I think his name is Corey Dawkins or Corey Hawkins.
Corey Hawkins,
Corey Hawkins says, "You're and he doesn't get to finish the sentence, and he gets an arrow in his neck. Awesome. But then and this is just the gap between my expectation and Christopher Nolan's execution, which is I am just partial stylistically to hand-to-hand combat in movies that is shot in a wide angle, that is really beautifully choreographed, almost to like a stylized extent, to like something that looks more like the Matrix or the John Wick films, or you know, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Like, and so in this epic big final showdown, I kind of wanted Odysseus to like just
go Legolas on him.
Go like, and it was a little, I mean, the fact of the matter is he's an old man who's like returning from a 20-year journey, and he moves a little stiff, and he's only got the bow and arrow, and he's just sort of walking around the room, just like shooting one guy at a time. And then he'll sort of like get in a scuffle with one guy. And it's also lit with all just natural lighting, with just like flames and candles. And I do love this choice. I like that it's also lit with lightning flashes, and it's almost like, it's almost like Zeus is watching this happen and approving of it. It's but my expectation in that moment, because it's like the final showdown, is like, now really give us something here to just feast on. And what Nolan opts for is something that's a little more messy and a little more chaotic. And I don't necessarily think that's bad. I just think that it's the gap between my taste and my expectation and the choice that was made. And I think the choice that was made is probably actually like more true to the spirit of this film.
That's totally valid. That is actually one of my lowest lows, not for the third act, but kind of the movie as a whole. But that is his style. And he said it in special features. He says he likes to have it a little bit more shaky. He feels like it feels more grounded and it feels more realistic, because he doesn't want it to look like a dance, which I understand. I get it. I think it works really well in certain movies. Nolan has really adapted it for his style, and I appreciate it that he is sticking with it, and that's what he likes to do. I am with you, though. I also really like the very highly stylized action, but I think for this movie, I think it's appropriate how he did it, because it's consistent.
Because it's like, to me, it's like, it is a dance. Like it's one of these elements of cinematic storytelling, and like also like live theater and stuff like that. That's like, it is choreographed, and it's meant to be experienced in a way where like we know it's choreographed, but we don't care. Like we like that it's choreographed, and we like watching really well executed, cool choreography. But I get where he's coming from, and I get that like he just wants it to feel like we talked about with Troy last week. Like that fight between Achilles and Hector is very choreographed, the choreography, it is very much a dance between these two, and it's really cool. And so I get people watching this and wanting that in this final moment. But and this isn't necessarily something that I think I'm going to change my mind on, because to this day, when I watch The Dark Knight or The Dark Knight Rises, I still have feelings about the way that he shoots action scenes, where I'm like, come on, it's a Batman movie, man. Like, let him cut loose a little bit,
I totally agree. And I think anybody who has that criticism, it's valid. But as we have said, and as you said too, this is what the filmmaker's trying to do. He's not trying to do it that other way. So I get not liking it. It's totally fine. I think I agree with you as well. I wish it was a little more highly stylized. I think his execution of what he was trying to do is right on point. The thing that I always look to as well is that what Nolan lacks in fight choreography, for lack of a better word, he makes up for in the stakes and the tension.
Yes.
He always has those, no matter what. You know what the stakes are. And this climax, you knew exactly what the stakes were.
Yes.
They built up to it the whole movie, and then they built up to it again when they started the third act.
Yes.
Like it was the third act was a little longer, which I really appreciated because it's setting up, and he goes to what's his
Telemachus.
Telemachus. Thank you. I always need to Telemachus, and then like he's telling him, and he's doing all this stuff, and then you know the stakes. What is at stake? His son's life is at stake. His wife's life is at stake. His life is at stake. Everything is there, and then the tension of just building it all the way up. Every suitor is trying to string the bow, and they can't string the bow, and you know that it's coming. Like, so all of that works out so well. And then the fight scene, I've come to expect that for Nolan. So
yeah,
like I totally get it. And I see, like, yes, if you have Zack Snyder's guy doing it, you're going to have a cooler fight sequence.
It's like I want to see
out of place.
I want to see Leonidas in 300, like going through like all these guys slow motion, flipping guys over his shield. But it's not going to feel like a Christopher Nolan movie. It's not going to feel like the rest of this film. And so I'm sitting here saying the gap between my expectation and the execution is like it's on me. It's like I have there's no reason why I should expect Christopher Nolan to do something that he's never done before, and B, that doesn't stylistically fit with the rest of the movie building up to this point. It's just my personal taste going like, oh, well, I would do it a different way. But it's like, but that doesn't mean that what he's doing is wrong. And you're absolutely right. The storytelling in the fight is still working. I'm still going like, there are moments where I don't know if he's going to win. Like there's moments where the suitors are getting the best of him, and where he's having to like get resourceful. Like that moment when he's just stabbing the guy with an arrow over and over again.
Yeah.
Or when he gets like, when we find out that he's wearing armor, that like he gets like thrown into a wall by a spear, and we're like, oh no, he just got speared. But then we like, he takes his robe off and he's wearing like armor, and we're like, oh, okay. All right. And those little reveals, Telemachus going up and fighting with the cowherd
guy with the spurs. Yeah.
Which also, like, that guy's like kind of a big actor, and he's just playing this. There are so many like big actors in this movie who are just like, I will do whatever you want me to do, Christopher Nolan, who are just showing up to be like nobody in this movie. But there's, I mean, I like that we get the little payoff of the move that Telemachus learns from Mentor in the film.
And it's funny too, going in line with this, my wife asked me the other night, she's like, why do you like Christopher Nolan so much? And one of the things that I said is that he is very measured in everything that he does. He does not do anything unless it's for the story. So even though Zack Snyder has some amazing action sequences that he films, he's a little overindulgent in what he wants to do rather than what the story is calling for. Christopher Nolan will never use slow motion unless it serves the story. He uses slow motion in Inception because he's showing the difference in time, going from one level to another. And so you'll see the slow motion, and then it goes down to the next level, and they'll be experiencing it in some way. He's not doing it just because it looks cool, which Zack Snyder does, which I don't mind as much because sometimes it is just cool. Like, and but he is very reserved. He's never going to do anything unless there's a purpose for it. And again, I would love to see that, but also you got to admire how much he sticks to his guns in everything that he does.
So that leads us nicely into my other lowest low. This whole thing of he sticks to his guns, and he also like is very measured and particular, and makes choices in a very particular way. Because the other lowest low for this film for me has kind of nothing to do with the movie. It's more about the online conversation around the movie that started months before the film was released and has continued now, where like there's all these layers to it. There's a political layer to it that's really annoying, where it just seems like there are people with a political agenda who just who need the movie to fail, who need the
Yeah.
movie to be a failure to prove that like woke Hollywood doesn't know what modern audiences want. You know, we modern audiences want movie like Uwe Boll's Citizen Vigilante. They don't want this woke Odyssey film from Christopher Nolan. And it's like, guys, they just try so hard to force the worst movies into the conversation and be like, no, we all want to watch Young Washington. Oh, do we, guys? Do you know? Oh, is that what we want to watch? You know, but like, so there's that thing that's annoying, but then there's also like in just the cinephile film bro discourse, there's just this thing of like, it's cool to be like, Nolan's not that good, to just sort of be a Nolan hater. You know what I mean? Like, just to like, to have the dissenting opinion, to be the person who's like, I don't know why you guys are all glazing. Why do you guys always got to glaze Nolan? And it's like, so like, you've got to sort of just find little things to nitpick way more than they deserve to be nitpicked. And I feel like a lot of the criticism that I'm seeing is people who are just reaching for anything to discredit the amazing craft on display here and everything. It's like, listen, film is an art form. Art is subjective. Nobody can quantify what your personal experience is in the theater. There is no such thing as an objective interpretation or experience of a piece of art. Your own experience is, you are entitled to your experience. You are entitled to your opinion. What I said in my first thoughts, though, is you are entitled to your opinion. You are not entitled to just invent facts, though. A lot of the conversation is about like historical and linguistic and anthropological inaccuracies. And not only are people just like incorrect when almost always when they try to cite what they think is anachronistic or inaccurate, but also it's like the point of making a modern adaptation of an ancient text is not to do the most pinpoint accurate recreation of that thing as possible. The point of adaptation is to find new colors and new layers and new ways of looking at it, you know? So, I in that same vein of you saying like he sticks to his guns, he makes really particular choices. There's like this thing where like from before the film even came out in the first trailer, and I'll be completely honest, my ear clocked this when Tom Holland said, "My dad is coming home." I went, "Oh, that sounds weird." It's the first time I'd ever heard a movie sort of set in this time period where someone said the word dad. But like, I thought, I know Christopher Nolan. I know he's very specific about the kind of language that he uses. And I don't think he would put a line like that in the trailer if he wasn't trying to signal something very specific. And then he came out that he was using Emily Wilson's interpretation. And then, you know, the more that I listened to actual linguists and actual historians and actual like literature experts talk about it, they were like, yeah, informal and formal words for the patriarchal parent figure or the maternal parent figure have or the matriarchal parent figure have always existed. Like there have always been words for both mother and mom and father and dad. They wouldn't necessarily be literal one-to-one translations for those words, but they would mean around the same thing. And both were used, as far as we can tell, in the original Homeric recitations of this poem. And I just, so like, not only are the people who are saying dad sounds inaccurate to me or feels inaccurate to me, it's like, not only are you like actually factually not correct about that, but also like Christopher Nolan is very specific about why is Telemachus saying dad and not father, and especially for a guy he's never met. And it is because he's trying to maintain this emotional connection to the idea of his dad, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And as we kind of talked about last week, like this is also the language was, you know, what, 3,000 years ago? Like it's not, what do you want? Do you want the whole movie, like you said, in, you know, the Passion of the Christ, where it's in a dead language? Like it's also just like speaking in an English accent makes just as little sense as speaking in a American accent. Like it's a choice. And it honestly, it's a little, I get it. I get it. People saying like, oh, it's a little weird, but like you get used to, I got used to it so quickly in the first 5 to 10 minutes, and it
It's
didn't
only
bother me at all.
it's only a little weird because of the way that our ears have been trained by modern cinema.
Yes,
So like
exactly.
we grew up watching the movie Gladiator, and Joaquin Phoenix speaks with sort of this affected, heightened English accent. And we're like, oh
Yeah.
yes, that's anytime there's a sword and sandal epic that takes place in antiquity, everyone should speak English, but in a heightened British accent. It's like, why? They would
Yeah.
have been speaking, they would have been speaking ancient Italian. Like they would
Yeah.
not have been,
Like Greek and
Greek, yeah.
yeah. There's
Yeah, it took place in Rome. Like, why would they
yeah.
be speaking English in
That's
British
right. And
accents?
yeah, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
It's every bit as arbitrary as if you just decided to give every character a Jamaican accent. And you were just like,
It's true.
you're like, we're just going to do it that way. And it's like, why? It's like, why not? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, so when people are like, how come they all have American accents? It's like, because it does make sense to make a choice, to say,
Yeah.
we're going to choose on a regional dialect for different characters. That makes sense to me, and try to keep it uniform. So that's why Tom Holland is doing an American accent. That's why Robert Pattinson's doing an American accent.
Yes.
But it's like, okay, if we have to choose between British and American, what's easier, having Robert Pattinson and Tom Holland do an accent that they've already done in 30 other movies, or having Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, John Leguizamo, John Barenthal, Lupita Nyong'o all have to do British accents for this, you know.
John Barenthal, that would be an interesting one.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And also it's like people talk about the costumes and how the costumes aren't period accurate. Now, and I'm like, guys, it is, none of this actually happened. This is ancient folklore. This is ancient mythology. None of this is real. And so I actually really love the creative license that they've taken with costumes in this film. I love the way the Trojans look. Like when they showed up at the beginning of the movie, I was like, they look so cool. Like those all white outfits. And I'm like, yeah, I know that
they
no
look
ancient,
so good.
Yeah, they look awesome. And I was like, I know that that's not like, nobody actually dressed like that, but this didn't actually happen. It didn't, like, that's the other thing. And I just think that, like, and when people will do on the internet and show side by sides of like what period accurate armor would, I'm like, be honest. Do you actually want it to look like that?
Exactly.
Do you actually want to watch that movie that looks better to you than Agamemnon's armor? You know, it's just, I just find a lot of the criticism to be not very serious. And
they're looking for something to tear the film down. And I get it, but as you have said, and as we have said, this is not supposed to be a 100% historically accurate film. First of all, because this is based on a myth, right? Like, and yes, it probably has some truth to it that has lasted, that went throughout the, you know, oral history, but this is a story. This is a fictional story for all intents and purposes. Odysseus was not a real person. Like, so they are taking creative license. They're trying to give you an emotion. And Agamemnon's armor, first of all, I think is amazing.
It's awesome.
I love how it looks. And they're trying to get you, they're trying to make him look different than everybody else, to make him look superior, because that's how he feels. He is superior than everyone. So he has this like perfectly black armor that makes him look really big and imposing. And it did. Like the, you know, the spine things,
the gold spine down his back. Yeah.
Awesome. Like, I love it. And they probably couldn't have made that back then, but I don't really care, because like it's going for a look, it's going for a feeling, and it's also going for the theme of the character. And it fits his theme so perfectly.
Yeah.
Right? So I like, once it becomes a documentary that's trying to tell you exactly what everything was like, then you want accuracy. In this, they're taking creative license to further the themes and the story that they're trying to tell.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's like I made a video where I talked about one of my favorite lines in the movie, which is when they sail past the sirens, and Odysseus wants to hear the siren song, so he has his men tie him to the mast, and he puts the rest of the men put wax in their ears so that they can't hear it.
Yes.
And he wants to be the, a lot of the movie is about his hubris and his ego, and he wants to be the only person to have ever heard the siren song and lived. But and this is one of Matt Damon's really powerful moments of acting in the film where we see him first start out kind of having this ecstatic experience listening to it, and then it almost drives him insane and he breaks down weeping and screaming, and then he's explaining what he heard, and he says lots of things that are really kind of beautiful and evocative. He talks about how it was a song of all of the promises I made but didn't keep, and he says this thing that where he says it was the song of the thing you want most but most can't have, and the thing you most can't have is the thing you already had but lost. Now obviously the weirdest phrase in that is the thing you most can't have. That's just a very like particular, it's like nobody, that's not something anyone's ever said. But again, Nolan being Nolan, that's all like that. That's a very intentional choice. And I talked about that line, and I talked about how like it's an example of really great poetic writing. And all these people were like, that's not poetry. And they started like quoting like older adaptations of the Odyssey and showing me like longer verse forms of things that people wrote in the mid 20th century and stuff. And I was like, be honest, do you actually think that hearing that poem read out loud on screen would be more cinematically like that would be a better cinematic experience for you? And also like the point of the like, so a lot of people have talked about the basic language of it. So people would say, I pointed out that line and they were like, every word in that line is one syllable. It's a bunch of monosyllabic words. The longest word in the entire phrase is already, like the thing you already had but lost, and every other word is a monosyllabic word. And I was like, okay, so pay attention to that then. The thing you most want is the thing you most can't have. Like all monosyllabic words, and the thing you most can't have is the thing, and it's like, that's in poetry, people are really paying attention to what is and I think that there is a very intentional thing about being economic with language in this. And it's like, what's the shortest, most to the point way I can say this? And that phrase, the thing you most can't have, is meant to stand out to your ear. You are meant to hear that and go, oh, that's an interesting way to say that. Not you're not supposed to go like it's not meant to the fact that you're noticing it is the point. I feel like the response people are having to it is like they're looking at like a Mark Rothko painting where it's just like a slab of red with like in like two shades, and they're going, I could have painted that. It's just two red rectangles. What is this? Or they're looking at like Van Gogh's sunflowers and going, they don't even look that much like real sunflowers. Like this looks like a little kid could have painted this. And it's like the simplicity is the point, because it's likely that in the original recitations of this poem, language was being used that could be understood across social status. So simple, common language was being used, but it was being used in a poetic way, which is also, we go back to the opening words of the movie, a face, a fleet, a man, a war, a trick, like these very simple phrases, rather than being like, what's the most economic way I can say it? A lot of people I see people criticizing the line, but I love it. I said that line, and in my comments, it was full of people going, but I love it. And then like everyone laughing at it, like, yeah, that line was so stupid. And it's just one line where he's responding to Calypso as she's trying to take the lotus flower away from him. And he says, but I love it. And it's like, my reading of the whole Calypso thing was he is sort of docile and he's made kind of simple by the flower, right? Like she's keeping him in sort of a subdued state. So again, all of these choices that people are criticizing, they're very intentional choices. And the fact that you're noticing it, it's meant to be noticed. Like he's telling you something with the way that Odysseus says, but I love it. And he says it kind of like a little kid having his favorite food taken away from him, because that's the state he's in on Calypso's island.
That's exactly what's going on. She is keeping him purposefully not remembering. And you're head on with that. So I think honestly, the other lowest lows that I have just, and I've heard this, none of these bothered me to the point of even, these are nitpicks. Like it was loud, but that was intentional again. So that's fine in my mind. And the dialogue, I feel like the dialogue you can hear so much better in this movie than some past Nolan films. I think there's still a few times where it happens, but it never was to a point that I felt like it was bad. But it happened a few times where I was like, oh, okay, well, I didn't really catch that, but I'll catch it on the next time. I think people will point that out, but I felt like this was a lot easier to hear this dialogue than some of Christopher Nolan's past films.
I agree. I think that it was a note that was taken. It felt like an improvement on,
it did.
you know.
Yeah.
And so, and but I think when people say I still was struggling to hear everything, I get that. And that's just,
I get that. Yeah.
And again, I think it's the first viewing too, where it's like, there's a lot coming at you, and the non-linear storytelling style means that you're trying to piece together a lot of things. And, I'll say one more thing for lowest lows before moving on, unless, and that's just that, like, in this sort of online conversation too, it's hard for me not to be frustrated with some of the like more overt and kind of gross racism and transphobia in people's, where it was annoying already when people were like, oh, Elliot Page is playing Achilles. And of course they have to dead name Elliot, and they can't, you know, like they always have to like be as disrespectful as possible when they talk about him. And, and they use she, her pronouns whenever they talk about him in their posts and stuff. But it's like, no, that's not who he's playing in the movie. You were wrong about that. And then the way that people talk about Lupita Nyong'o, who I genuinely think is like one of our greatest living actors.
She's amazing.
And she's one of the most beautiful women in show business. And she's gorgeous in this film. And she's also in the film for like 3 minutes. And and they keep screenshotting this like one shot of her while she's like crying as her daughter is being thrown in the ocean by her husband. And they're like, look how ugly she is while she cries. And it's so just like kind of overtly and disgustingly misogynistic and racist. And it is something where I'm like, it has nothing to do with the film. It's not a knock on the film. I just wish people weren't so gross.
Yeah.
You know?
And honestly, there's no place for it. And Elliot Page, first of all, and Lupita Nyong'o do a great job.
Yeah.
Like Elliot Page is, especially when he's giving his speech after coming up from Hades, is extremely effective.
Yeah.
I mean, and it really hits on, excuse me, it really hits on the themes of the movie. And then that also is one of the best setups to one of the best payoffs in the end of the movie, with the lot that he carries around still from, is it Cinna? I think his name is Cinna, right? Sinan, thank you.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it's awesome. And Elliot Page does an awesome job in that scene. Like, honestly, that was great. So I totally agree. 100% agree.
Also, Zendaya is great in this movie, and that's,
she was so good. Yeah.
And, you know, but so it's just like people hate the fact that people hate that Travis Scott is in this movie as the
bard.
You know, the bard. And I'm like, but he's great. Like, and again, he's in the movie in like 2 scenes. And it's just so, I just find it all to be so like tiring, and it has nothing to do with the film. And then I think that a lot of this film criticism that's reaching where, you know, like people are talking about like the horse in this movie versus Troy. And it's like, well, that's one of the things that I really like about this movie, is that they're on that beach for 10 years in this film. Yeah. And also they were master craftsmen. They were master sculptors. Like they sculpted beautiful things out of marble. You don't think they could make a horse out of, you know, given 10 years on a beach? But and also it's a movie. And and
I mean, if you're going to give an offering to the gods, you would want it to look as good as it can be. That's a part of the trick, is the presentation. Right. So I really liked it. I loved how the horse looked.
Yeah, the one from Troy looks like there are people hiding inside that thing.
It does,
and it looks like
it does. And like the one from Troy, I get it. It fits with that story.
Yeah.
This fits so much more with this story too. So you can like both. Honestly, it's fine to like both of them.
Yeah, it is. It's totally. I feel like people think they have to like one or the other, and
no, you don't have to. It's fine.
That's annoying. Oh, so here's you brought up the payoff of Sinan with the lot. Help me out with this. This is still the one thing that I can't figure out. And I
Right.
thought I maybe misunderstood it the first time I watched it. And then the
Right.
second time I watched it, I was like, I'm still confused.
Yeah.
I get that Robert Pattinson's character Antinous, I get that he is a villain by the time he's grown up. He's a total the way he takes advantage of the hospitality of Odysseus's court while Odysseus is gone at war, and the way that he
Right.
preys on Penelope, and the way that he tries to kill Telemachus, and all of his he's very villainous. I don't understand why him trying to take Sinan's place in the army is bad. It seems like a noble thing to do, right?
Well, I thought, and this, I still am unsure about this as well. That's really what I want to pay attention to in the second viewing.
Yeah.
But what I thought happened when I first watched it is that he got called and Sinan did not. And he is trying to change places with Sinan. And then Odysseus sees it and he points it out, but then they kind of change it like, oh, he wanted to be there. And I think in my mind, Odysseus is saying, I want a soldier who wants to be here rather than one that doesn't want to be here. And he saw that Antinous didn't want to be there. So he took Sinan in his place. That's kind of how I interpreted that, is that like, but he never thought it was going to be, he's like, oh, he can stay here and watch everybody. And his dad's like, oh yeah, he can watch over your son too. And he's kind of like, yeah, sure. But I don't think he ever perceived, Antinous as being able to do what he did. But I think he saw him as someone who's trying to run away, and he doesn't want someone like that. I could be totally wrong, but that's how I read the scene.
That's how I wanted it to be. I was like,
right,
it makes more sense to me that he should feel shame for trying to get out of having to fight and trying to trade places with this much smaller boy. But then when I watched it the second time, I was like, the scene, just as it's presented, plays to me like Antinous is trying to take the place of the younger boy and be like, I'll go. And what Odysseus is saying is, no, he drew the lot that is for like, you have to stay.
Okay.
Like, you're not allowed to switch lots, but maybe, but I might be wrong. I might be that he saw it and he went, you know what, actually, I want this, I want someone who's willing to go. Because the whole point of Sinan is that he's the bravest soldier I ever knew,
I really want to pay attention to that scene because it was confusing. I've heard a few people say it's confusing, which, but again, I'm as with so much going on, I need to pay attention to that because honestly, I don't know.
That could be a little nitpick at the script where I would go, that needs to just be clarified just a little bit more, because I watched it twice and I was still like, are we saying that he should be ashamed of trying to like rob Sinan of the chance to die with honor in battle? And if we are saying that, that seems like a weird, is that just like, it's just like an antiquated version of shame? I don't know.
I agree. That could, I got to figure it out. And I've been actually meaning to kind of look it up a little bit more, but yeah, that could have been a little more clear, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, obviously Sinan is like really mad.
Yeah.
When he comes back from Hades. So there's something there, and that could be more clear.
I know. I feel like what makes more sense is what you said, but I'll check it again tomorrow when I see it again. But on both viewings, I was like, I'm not quite sure what happened here. And I think it would help that payoff land a little stronger if it was a little clearer. But maybe that's just one of those things of like the rewatching of a Nolan movie where like the more I watch it, the more I'm going to be like, oh no, I totally see what's going on here. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Okay. We spent a lot of time actually on lowest lows.
On the lowest lows.
But there's just a lot to talk about with this movie. So going into the highest highs, what are some of your things? I mean, it's a lot.
Yes, there are a lot. So we'll go through it kind of piece by piece. This, for me, the highest high that I put was the 70 millimeter. And I know we've already kind of talked about it. It's the format, right? And I I know I might come off as sounding like a snob, which is fine, but like as a person who loves film, if you don't care, that's totally fine. No worries. But like seeing it in such a clear, like I'm really excited for you to see it tomorrow and let me know what you think. But every time the sunset shot came on, that's going, they're trying to go to the west,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that shot is what made me realize that like I understand why people think that Lawrence of Arabia is one of the most beautiful movies ever shot. And
Mm-hmm.
like there's a shot when he blows out the match, and then it goes to this beautiful landscape shot, right? And everybody feels like that's one of the best shots in cinema history. And I saw this on 70 millimeter and I was just like, oh my gosh, this shot looks so beautiful. You can see just like all the waves. It's like I'm looking at a real ocean, like,
Yeah.
but it still feels cinematic. So the colors are really rich and like everything looks so clear, but it also has that, the bokeh is amazing on it. And like the shallow depth of field, everything is just like, it all felt so cinematic that in, tied with the story itself, as I have said, made it one of the top theater experiences I've ever had. So that was amazing. If you get the chance, I would highly recommend to go see it in 70 millimeter, or if you see it in 35 millimeter. But even if you just see the movie, because it's just amazing. So that was my highest high, because I just love that experience so much. So
yeah, that's a really good one too. And I mean, the technical craft of the film is so high.
everything, yeah.
I wrote down editing. I've seen this a lot from people too who went, I really liked it, but I felt like the first act was really clunky. People love that word clunky. I feel like, again, and I feel like clunky is what people reach for when the execution is not lining up with their expectation. And it's just sort of, but and then people talk about the exposition, that it's very exposition heavy. I feel like that first act can feel a little clunky because or jarring because we're jumping back and forth between different timelines and stuff. But once you get to the third act and everything's landing, the supposed quote unquote clunkiness of the first act all of a sudden starts to come into clarity, and the order of how everything was laid out. I found the edit to this to be very similar to the edit of Oppenheimer, where it's like almost like the film is one big long sequence and it's all being edited together as like one big long like kind of concerto that like is it's never actually rooted. There's never really like a sense of the present, except for maybe where the third act takes place. But I felt like when you're first watching it, there can be a feeling that we're just sort of arbitrarily on vibes going from one place to another. But then once you get to the end, you realize, oh, opening the movie with Sin on the beach by himself and the horse is it needs to happen here because this is the inciting incident of the film. And and we don't know that yet because we're also going to Ithaca 18 years later. So it's weird to have the inciting incident next to something that's basically 2 decades later and have them kind of intercut with each other, and having things like Zendaya showing up as Athena and not knowing quite who she is or why, know. And I felt like the way that I just felt like this was an editing masterclass, that like the way that he sort of parsed out little pieces of hints about what was going to come without telegraphing to us that that's what he was doing. It just sort of felt like typical Nolan nonlinear stuff, but he kept showing us like the build up to this shot that we saw in the trailer over and over again of this soldier cutting the head off of a statue of Athena. And I think we all thought that was Matt Damon in the trailer.
Yeah,
like, and I kept waiting for that shot in the movie. And it felt like every time we would revisit the fall of Troy, we would get like right up to that shot and cut away from it. And I didn't know why we were doing that. And I was like, why is he building up this, this moment so much? And I just feel like the entire film is such a masterclass in like where to put what shot, what part, what, so watching the edit is something that's really next level.
I think you're totally right. And I think it also is, it's not that it's clunky, it's that it's on first watch, you're not sure how it all fits together.
Mm-hmm.
And on the second watch, you realize, oh yeah, that's okay. That's why they did it this way. That's why they did it this way. And it was edited very well. Everything, the technical aspects of these films are awesome. Of this film is pretty amazing. And we'll get to the head cutting off in a little bit, because that was amazing. But my next one of my next highest highs, and I want to ask you about this, is John Leguizamo.
People are crazy about his performance in this movie.
Dude, he blew me away. I don't know. I mean, he's a great actor anyway, and you got the chance to work with him, right?
That's my dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in a movie with him 8 years ago. Nice. And he was lovely to work with, and he was
so cool,
so nice to me, and I'm so happy to see him doing, like, he's always worked our whole entire lives.
Totally.
And
totally.
I'm just glad to see that everyone's responding so positively to his performance. I think that he's great in the film. I have another friend named Jesse Garcia who I just did a movie with.
That's right.
Earlier this year, and he's one of Odysseus's men, and he's like part of the main crew, and he's in a ton of the movie as well. So it was fun to watch my friends,
very cool,
and former coworkers do work in this movie. That was cool.
And I remember you saying that about your friend Jesse Garcia. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Awesome. Way cool. But yeah, John Leguizamo, I think I wasn't, like, I've always loved him. I just wasn't expecting him to have, I don't know, such an impact. Like, he just, everything with Tom Holland, like, he's throughout the whole movie, you know, Tom Holland with Odysseus's dog, and just the fact that he continues to pound home Zeus's law and why it's important, right? And how that fits in with the theme. I just thought he pulled it off so well, and I was just blown away by him. And the other ones, like, everyone in this movie, as you kind of said, is amazing, even if they're in it for just a minute. Like Samantha Morton, everyone's talking, a ton of people are talking about, oh, she's going to get an Academy Award nomination. She was the best part, which she was amazing. She's barely in the movie.
Yeah.
But her sequence is one that stands out so much because she is at, like, it was amazing.
You know who I don't think enough people are talking about is Bill Irwin. Like, I think Bill Irwin, because before I watched the movie, everyone kept talking about how scary the Cyclops sequence is and the Cersei sequence. And so when the Cyclops sequence started, I thought that the Cyclops creature was going to be more menacing than he. What's scary about him is his sort of indifference to Odysseus and his men. That he's just sort of like, oh, looks like I got a snack here. Like, oh, like a little walking Twinkie walked into my, but like, he's very, but like, as a character, he's very, I didn't expect to like have so much compassion for him. I felt really bad for the Cyclops, to be honest. And the design of this character, I thought was so cool to have it almost be that, like, it's like a normal face that then just kind of twists.
Yeah.
Almost like,
and there is, I forgot the name of it. There is a disorder where some babies have it, where it's like cyclopsia. I'm butchering the name. I can't remember what it is exactly, but it looks like they have one eye, and it looks like that's what happened to this Cyclops. And I loved the design because his eye is turned up sideways, as if his face is sideways. Yeah. And I love that,
like his nose is sideways too. So
it is. It's like,
his nose. It's almost like if, like, halfway up his nose, if you just took his face and twisted it. And I'm like, that's such an interesting.
Oh, I loved it.
Because also, like, making it look like he has a birth defect also makes him inherently more sympathetic in a way.
And a little more human, even though he's a giant. Like,
and the fact that he's just sort of this, like, soft, like, little guy who he makes cheese, and he doesn't even eat the sheep. He's just like a shepherd who's very gentle with his, he just is making cheese in his cave. And Odysseus and his men are totally the aggressors of, I mean, he eats them, you know, and that is,
but
scary.
It's also kind of like, you know, he says, because when they burn, is it when they burn? No, when they're about to leave, whenever he starts talking, he's like, do you talk to an ant? Like, like, and he's just living his life. Like, the Cyclops just living his life. And Bill Irwin does do, and he is the he's the robot in Interstellar, right? He
Uh-huh.
was the voice and he was the puppeteer for
It's
it.
Tars.
Yeah, he's thank you, Tars. That was yeah.
Tars. Come
He's
on,
awesome.
Tars.
Yeah. Like
Come
his
on,
voice. And
Tars.
I didn't realize that either. I was like, oh yeah, that's the guy. That's that guy.
Yeah.
He does do a great job. And when he's crying, like you feel it. And so the whole that whole sequence also is equal parts scary, but then you do get a sense that like, oh man, this is like a real thing, and like an Odysseus is kind of being a jerk, which he is. And even in the story, like this is his journey, this is Odysseus's journey to become a better person, right? And this is the point more at the beginning of the story when he's not really that great. So it is a great sequence.
I think that we could almost say that this highest high, rather than just talking about John Leguizamo, who definitely does, he is the beating heart and the conscience of the film, is all of the little supporting performances that make this movie up. That it's like John Barenthal is really great as Menelaus, and even in her limited screen time, Lupita does a really good job.
Yeah, playing two characters, by the way, which
playing two characters, which Elliot Page makes really good use of very limited screen time. Zendaya makes really good use of very limited screen time. You know, like, I just think that's probably
I just think
it's truly an ensemble piece.
It is, and all the acting. Like I thought Tom Holland was great. I thought Anne Hathaway was amazing, and I thought Matt Damon knocked it out of the park too. There's nobody that I thought was a bad performance. Like there are smaller parts, but they were all really amazing. So that was definitely the acting in this movie just all around was great.
I wrote down as a highest high, like obviously all of the major set pieces are all thrilling. Like all of the, like the Cyclops scene, the Cersei scene, the scene with the giants, two of my favorites, if I had to highlight in the whole third act killing the suitor scene, but two of my favorites are, the first one is the fall of Troy. I think the actual extended sequence of the fall of Troy is
absolutely
so cool. And there's so many little details that I love. I think Chris Stuckman pointed this out in his review, that the men that their legs are asleep when they get out of the horse, and they're like limping because they've been in that horse for days. And just all of the fact that like you can almost feel coming off these men that like they stink. They haven't had,
it was a horrible experience.
And like they're pouring out their rage and their discomfort on the men. But then like this shot of opening the gates and Agamemnon just standing there and all the men flooding in, and like also the shot when he drops the flame over the wall and it lights up and you just see I was like, and hearing Matt Damon talk about that too and going, I didn't know, he's like, we didn't know how many extras they had on set that day. He's like, so we opened the gate, and he's like, and we just saw Benny standing there because it was dark. And he's like, and all of a sudden, like 3,000 guys just ran through the gates. He's like, and we were all just like, And he's like, and all of us were like, yeah, like we just started, and I'm like, yeah, it is so hype. Like it is.
And that, and the fact that like, Troy, again, it's fine for Troy. Like it's cool. They come out and they open the gates and they run through. The camera angle is really cool. This is a struggle. They get out, they're limping, and it's like, okay, we got to kill somebody. Like, and they have to get these, and then they get notified real quick. Like the Trojans know that they're there, and they have to, like, everything has to work out, and they have to hurry and get the gate open. And it's so, the tension in that is so great for such a great payoff. And then the fact of like after that, which we'll get to, how unsatisfying that is.
Well,
in a perfect way for the theme of the film.
Totally. But even in the initial thing, something you can feel that it's like off, and it's Ludwig Göransson's score, the way that it's like the building drums and the like that it feels like something bad is happening. And even though you don't know, and so there's this weird thing going on while you're watching it where you're like, wow, this sequence is amazing, and also I feel weirdly like this is bad, like this shouldn't it
is a release. Like I cried in that scene, like because it just felt so earned for like, and then you feel bad for but it was executed so well. Seeing Benny Safdie sit in his art, like it was so jarring, and then everybody comes through. It was such a such a well executed scene. It was
Yeah.
awesome. And okay, so that was the first one. What was your second one?
My other one is we're we're on the boat and we do this sort of like move through 3 different monsters, and it's
Yeah.
I mean, I could also say Hades. Hades is really cool too.
Yeah, Hades is amazing.
Hades is so cool.
Oh yeah.
They're all really cool. All of the major set pieces are really cool, but I love this one on the boat where we start by having to pass the sirens, and
Yeah.
the men, I already talked about this. The men put
Yeah.
wax in their ears, and
Yep.
Odysseus ties himself to the mast. But then they have a choice to make whether to go toward the whirlpool monster
Yeah.
or to risk the monster that's in the Narrows. The I can't remember his name. The
Yeah, it's the 6-headed one.
yeah, Selena or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I love about this sequence is that we stay in the perspective of the boat. I feel like there
Yes.
would be a temptation from a lot of filmmakers to like want to see
Yeah.
more of these monsters, show
Totally.
more of them, actually show, you know, close-ups and inserts of the sirens, but everything in this sequence is experienced from the perspective of Odysseus and his men in the boat,
Yes.
and I love that.
Yeah.
I love
Oh, it
that,
was
like,
awesome.
yeah.
Well, and then you also feel kind of betrayed by Odysseus as well, because he again is trying to lie his way through, right? Like, if I told you, you guys wouldn't have done it. So, like, I had to make you believe. I had to, which goes into the theme of the entire movie. But yeah, that was really cool because when Hamish Patel, right, puts the wax in his ears, it goes silent, and then we hear everything from their perspective. Again, the how Nolan sticks to his guns. You know, I totally agree. There's a temptation to do a wide shot that looks amazing that shows off the monster, but no, he's not gonna.
They could do an overhead drone shot that shows all of them. That's like there's the sirens, there's the whirlpool, that, you know, and really they could do all kinds of things. But I think the choice to go, what would this feel like to these small mortal men in this boat as these forces that are even like the storms that happen where it's at night and we're just in the boat with them. And rather than doing these big wide shots of them, you know, riding up a 50-foot wave, and, you know, to keep it feeling like we're actually in there with them and like it's real, I think is a really good choice.
Yes, I agree.
What are your other highest?
The pig scene. I was going to say the pig scene.
Yeah,
just the way that it was executed too is something that could, like, I also feel like he used some of the reversing, like in Obsession. I don't know. It's like they're eating, and it's almost as if it's like they reverse the footage because it looks like it's just sucking up unnaturally.
Well, what are they eating? It looks like they're eating like intestines or like it's
like seaweed, like, and all this weird stuff. It's like, and you can tell that they're like they can't stop themselves. They're like terrified, right? And then when she's moving their faces and all that, like. Awesome.
I love back to your disguises. Disguises.
Yes,
good.
and they turn back into themselves.
Yeah.
Well, their disguises who are their, you know, human.
She's saying that being pigs are their true form, and you know. Yeah. I mean, and this is another criticism that people make is they're like, oh, there's so much more to that scene, or there's so much more that's said between Odysseus and the Cyclops. And I'm like, right, it's a 3-hour-long film and he's got to get through all of this. I think that he makes such good editorial decisions about like what to keep in and what, and because I feel like we get it. Like, I feel like I get what's going on in that scene and what purpose it serves to this specific adaptation. And
agreed. And as we talked about the Hades scene, I think the Hades scene is really where things start to change. Like, and that scene as well, just the man. Yeah. As you said, every sequence. The other cool thing is every sequence is also, first of all, I forgot to say this. First of all, the story itself starts non-linearly in the original poem. Right. So it was justified why Christopher Nolan wanted to do it that way. He also just likes to do that anyway. But the scene, but Hades is kind of where everything turns kind of to the theme of the movie, which I guess we should get it. Do you have any more highest highs?
Let's see. I don't know. No, yeah, there are other things like I like the scope of it. I like, if I'm comparing it to Troy, it's like I like that they spend 10 years on the beach. I like that
Yes.
I like seeing the inside of the horse. I like
Yeah.
just kind of the scale and the sense of time and the sense of like what's actually been done to these people. All of that's good. But did you want to go on to theme next
We
or
could,
biggest
yeah.
shocks?
I was gonna say, I was gonna say themes. I guess we could
Yeah.
go on to biggest shocks because we're really the biggest shocks that I had were the Cyclops and the pig scenes, just the way that they were all executed, which we kind of have already gone into. So, did you have any big shocks?
Oh, for me, it was all the third act reveals, which again, you
Yeah,
talk about setup and payoff. The way that this stuff was set up throughout, I just did not.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't. I love it when like I really didn't see it coming. I just accepted that Zendaya was playing Athena, and that's what Athena looks like in this movie. Because why
yeah.
not? Like I don't know. Like if Calypso is Charlize
Charlize
Theron,
Theron.
like
Yeah,
I don't know what Athena is supposed to look like. Like whatever. I absolutely loved the reveal once we're into the third act and Odysseus goes back into Ithaca disguised as a beggar to assess the situation. He goes and
yeah.
talks to Penelope because she likes to talk to strangers to hear if they have news of her husband. And he
Right.
tells her, that he knows Odysseus, and he tells her that Odysseus is alive. But he's explaining to her, she's like, well, why isn't he coming home? And he's explaining to her, well, he might think that the home that he left, he's not allowed, that it doesn't exist the way that he thought it did. Uh, and we realize that he's been avoiding reaching home. He chose to take the southerly winds along the westward trail because he
Yeah,
didn't want to go home. And that's the other thing that's revealed to him in the siren song, is that he doesn't want to go home. The reason
yeah,
why, it's like Calypso is keeping him subdued and keeping him from remembering, but also he wants to stay there with Calypso. He wants to not think. He needs the
yeah,
time to get over his guilt and his shame and to heal. But she's always known, like, as soon as he's ready to go home, he will go home. But
yeah,
he explains to her that, like, he realized at the moment of the siege of Troy that he had irrevocably broken Zeus's law and broken the world, broken the
yeah,
fragile bonds that
yeah,
hold men together. And we realize that the form of Athena that has been appearing to him is the form of this woman that he watched get beheaded in
yeah.
the city of Troy that night, this Trojan woman. And
That
it's so,
payoff of the shot of cutting the head off of the statue
yep,
is so effective.
yeah.
Like she comes and she's crying, and they see the sword, and then they cut the head off of the statue. That to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like.
And learning that she's just this woman that he watched be murdered
Well,
in front
and
of him.
this
And
is
yeah,
yes. I have a question for you though, because either way is extremely effective. Because they said, well, gods will come. You don't want to.
right.
You don't want. You
The
never
idea of
know if
Zeus's
the
law
god is
is
disguised.
be nice to strangers because it could be a god in disguise. Yeah.
Right. And my thought was that, oh, they think they killed this woman, but it was actually Athena in disguise. Kind of
Could
almost
be.
showing and yeah, and that was my interpretation. Everybody else is saying, well, she's taking on the form of her. I think it works either way.
Yeah.
But my thought was, oh, well, that is Athena. And they think they killed her, but she's just testing them. And she's all, but I don't know. I mean,
It totally could be. And I think that that's something that, like, it's not specifically spelled out. I think
right.
I prefer the idea that it is just this woman, and
And
that
when I heard that, I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes more sense.
his guilty conscience is just taking the form of,
Of
yeah.
yes, and I do love it. And honestly, like, man, when he's down on his back and that all happens, oh man, that really
But
it hits you hard. It hit me
but
really hard.
then with that, there's this other huge payoff, because from the first act of the film, when Telemachus is talking to his mother Penelope about, Ithaca needs a king, because there are these rumors coming in from people,
Yes.
of people from the sea who break Zeus's law. They're lawless, and they
Yep.
come into cities and they pillage and they kill. And we don't think at the time that it's like, yeah, the way people get news in this world is by travelers coming from place to place and giving like news of the
Yeah.
world. That's one of the reasons why like kings and queens will ask to talk to a traveler that comes in. It's like,
Right.
bring them
Right.
over here because they just want to go like, hey, do you have any news? Like, have you heard
Yeah.
anything out there? Do you know
Mhm.
anything? And so people are going around saying, hey, there's this story of these people from the sea who are showing up and they're killing people, and so everyone's scared in all of these different kingdoms. In Sparta, they've heard of them. Cersei's heard of them.
Yep.
These people from the sea. And early on in the Odyssey, on the journey home, they even stop in this village and they pillage the village. And they ask the
Yeah.
guy, they go, how come you guys didn't welcome us? And he's like, well, because we thought you were the people from the sea. And they go, no, we're the Greeks. And the reveal at the end of the film that the people from the sea are Odysseus and his men, that
Yes.
they are the people from
Yeah.
the sea. And it,
And that was extremely shocking, which this goes into the theme, if that's okay.
yeah.
Because the theme of the movie is extreme. The biggest theme that I found was the most simple theme, but it was also the most impactful, which
Mhm.
is Zeus's law, which is also the golden rule: treat people how you want to be treated, right?
Right.
And like you need to welcome people in because you never know if it's a god in disguise. And they kept saying that throughout the movie, and I was just kind of like, oh yeah, okay, this is just a plot point. This isn't,
Mhm.
anything. But then when the fact that he realizes that, oh, we are the people of the sea, like, and he realizes I can't go back because I'm the one who did all of this. And every story, like you said, the shock is like you completely recontextualize the entire movie from that point,
Mhm.
and you realize that like he did all of this, and you knew that this was a test. This is a test from the gods, pretty much,
Mhm.
for him to learn his lesson. But like everything is about, and he still is trying to like justify lies, right? Like, which is a big theme in all of Christopher Nolan's movies, is lying to people for the betterment of them or whatever, right? And that's what he's been trying to do. That's what Odysseus has been trying to do. But realizing that like you just kind of, like you said, broke the world. Like it is so, like when that happened, that whole scene between him and Penelope, and then in the end was just like, oh my gosh, like I started to cry in that scene, and it was just like, wow, this is such a simple thing. Be nice to others, just because that's how the whole world should work. Like it hit me so hard. So the fact that that was the theme that you didn't even really know was the theme throughout the whole movie was extremely amazing and so well executed. I can't say enough about it, just how good that was in something that is so simple. For like in every culture, we all have something that's like that, right? And so I
Yeah.
think it just resonated so hard, especially with now and throughout all of time. Probably why this story is so relevant 3,000 years later is because it, is kind of on something that is universal to everybody. Let's all treat each other nicely.
Well, and I also like that there's multiple different ways that Nolan sets this up. There's the
Yes.
repetition of Zeus's law and
Yes.
the different ways that people practice Zeus's law. But then
Yeah.
in Odysseus specifically as a character, when we first meet him, it's him hunting. The first time we see him in the film, or Antinowitz says, "I saw him hunt as a kid. I watched him do it." You
Yeah.
know, and it shows Antinous as a kid sort of admiring the king of Ithaca, stringing up his bow, and he's hunting, and he would flick his bowstring to warn the
Yeah.
prey that he was there, and then he would shoot the arrow. But
Yeah.
he gets bit on the ankle by this wild boar, which winds up being a thing later on in the
Yeah.
film because this woman
Great
who had
payoff as well.
great
Yeah.
payoff. But Eumaeus, played by John Leguizamo, his servant, asks him, he says, "Why do you always pluck your bow before you
Yeah.
shoot?" And he goes,
Yeah.
"Because it's important to fight with honor." And he goes, "But you're not fighting, you're hunting." And he goes, "It's the same thing." He's like, "It's
Yeah.
always, it's like you're engaging. Like if I'm going to take another creature's life, I need to give them the respect of letting them know what's about to happen
Right.
and giving them a chance to get away, giving them a chance to fight
Yeah.
fair." And Ludwig Göransson builds this into the score. There's this
Yes.
4-note motif that goes bum 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 bum, and on the bum
Yeah.
is the pluck of the
Yeah.
arrow,
Of
but
the bow.
those
Yep.
other four notes are played on like an ancient lyre, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Which is
they
cool.
built for the movie. It's crazy.
Right. Right.
But that plays at the beginning and at the end when he comes home to who he is, when he comes home to
Yes.
be Odysseus again. But it plays in a version that doesn't resolve when he's in
Mhm.
Troy, because what's actually going on in Troy is he's not plucking his bow to
Yeah.
let the enemy know that he's about
Yep.
to fight them. He's
Yeah.
breaking his own code. He's breaking
Yes.
his own rules, not just the code of the land, not just Zeus's law, but Odysseus's law, his
Yep.
own code of honor. And so there's this other theme of like what home actually means. It's not just a place, it's
Right.
a version of yourself that you believed
Yes.
in once, that like he once
Yep.
thought of himself as a man of honor, a man of principle, and then he betrayed his own principles and his
Yep.
and so the Odyssey is about him coming back to, is there any way I can regain my honor after what I've done? Is there,
Yep.
he
Yep.
doesn't even know if it's possible. If it's
Yeah.
like what he did was such a gross betrayal of his own values and his own
Yes.
morals. And he also like when he shoots the Cyclops, doesn't pluck his bow. He just shoots him, you know?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
we see that like in the immediate aftermath of Troy, he's taking a while to, he's kind of hardened and he's a different kind
Yeah.
of guy when
Yeah.
he's on the Odyssey. And it's almost like that scene with Cersei where he's hunting and he plucks his bow again, that he's almost like beginning to refine himself.
Right.
And it's
Right.
all these different ways that Nolan is setting up the same theme for the same payoff of
Yeah.
us realizing that the whole movie was about this guy who
Yeah.
broke
Yeah.
not only the fragile ties that bind civilization together, just the basic idea of kindness, of universal
Right.
kindness.
Right.
But yeah, also with that, this idea of like be kind to strangers, this universal thing, this
Yeah.
simple idea is this other theme of like the fear of the other.
Right.
And like I guess I would couple with that like tribalism and nationalistic hubris, the idea that the people I was born around are the good guys of the world. You know, like who are the heroes and who are the good guys, who are the bad
Yes.
guys? The
Yeah.
automatic assumption that like whoever I was born around geographically are automatically the good people, and
Mhm.
people from other places with other beliefs and other cultures, cultural practices and cultures are automatically suspect and suspicious and maybe even
Yes.
bad. And I
Yeah.
think that there's a possibility that Nolan deliberately cast a trans man and Lupita Nyong'o to try to challenge the audience's fear of the other,
Right. Yeah.
thematically. I don't know. I don't know if he did, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't. I mean, it's a very possible. I think the other thing is, as you talked about, like we all think we're the good guy, right?
Right.
Until we're tested. And in that moment, like when I was watching the movie, when he starts to realize, he said, in that moment, I realized like what I had done
Hmm.
to get what I wanted. And it was like, oh yeah, he's realizing he's the bad guy. Like, and you realize like while they're ransacking Troy, it's like, yeah, you guys are the bad guys. You're
Yeah.
the men of the sea. Like you're the ones who did. And it's the Matt Damon's performance in that sequence was amazing, just because you could just see it, like you see it on his face the whole time of like, yeah, this is not what I wanted, but he doesn't want to accept it in that like right after that, he doesn't want to accept it, right? That's why he goes on the journey. But
Hmm.
like it was, yeah, I think you're right there with there's a fear like, oh yeah, well, we're always the good guy, we're the good guy, but like, yeah, but the bad guys think they're the good guys too. So like,
Well, this the idea of like how to, so there's one theme of like be kind and be
y-
open
yeah,
to like just general common kindness amongst
yeah,
people, and those are the ties that bind and keep civilization moving forward. But then there's also this idea of like sometimes conflict is unavoidable, and how do you go through conflict in an honorable way? And I was
right,
thinking a lot about like another Matt Damon war movie, Saving Private Ryan, and I
yeah,
love the speech that Captain Miller gives, where his men are mad at him because he lets this guy go, this German guy that just killed
yeah,
Giovanni
yeah,
Ribisi, and he tells him, he goes, he says, listen, if you guys want to go off and fight the war, I'll sign the paperwork for you. I won't get mad at you. I won't blame you. And he goes, but just know every man I kill, the further away from home I feel.
Yeah.
And it's basically Captain Miller saying, like, it's hard for me to just shoot a guy. He goes, if I'm going to shoot someone, it's gotta be like a situation where it's me or him. Like, we're both looking at each other and we're both shooting at each other. And one of us, and he's like, but if the fight is over and he's unarmed and I've just had him dig ditches for all of, the dead here, I have a really hard time looking at an unarmed man who's begging me for his life and shooting him. And there's still we still to this day have rules of engagement. We have laws around how warfare should be waged. And we have such a thing as war crimes, because there still is this idea of, like, there are things that are, I guess, civil to do in warfare, even though it seems like such an oxymoron, because it's just like war is inherently unkind and messy and evil and brutish, but we've always had throughout human history this idea of, like, is there an honorable way to engage in conflict?
And that is, in the end, I love that you bring up Oner, because in the end he plucks his bow
when he's
giving them all a chance to know. And I mean, they can bow. I love that a few of them start bowing, right? They get down, and that's accepting that he is fighting honorably in that moment, because those men have not been honorable, right? So it's totally I think it's a great point that you brought up, for sure.
Yeah, lots of really cool themes with this one. How about just the ending of the film? And I guess that's just the whole third act, but I feel like it's one of the greats.
Yeah, I think, honestly, the ending, which we really covered this in the theme, because the ending and the theme are so intertwined. This is as close to a perfect ending, in my opinion, as you can get.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that we just talked about, this is what you want for a film. You want the ending. You want your character to get the lesson, right? Not in an overt way. You want them to get the lesson, and you want everything that was set up to be paid off, that needs to be paid off. And this all happens. And he has learned it, right? He's learned his lesson. He plucks the bow. He has this huge, fight scene. Everybody kind of gets their comeuppance. And Robert Pattinson, I guess in the original story, it's different. I think he's the first one that Odysseus kills. If I understand correctly. I could be wrong. I'm not anything. But I love that he never fights.
Yeah.
He tells everybody else to fight, and he gets them to do it. And he's standing behind a pillar the whole time. And then he just kind of like backs up and falls down when Odysseus comes. And that payoff it was so satisfying, right?
Yeah.
And like, you want everything to be paid off. You want it all. And in the original story, I think Athena comes down and prevents all these people from, killing him, but killing Odysseus. But he just decides to banish himself, leaving Telemachus by himself, right?
Sorry, keep going. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, I can't remember. I think it was Chris Stuckman said, which I didn't think of this, but I love this. He said, that's almost like, I mean, the whole movie is kind of like, we kind of made this mess, and now the younger generation has to kind of deal with it, which I thought, wow, yeah, that's true. Like, and it is kind of like, but it's hopeful, right? Like, it's a hopeful,
I did like the idea of, like, this isn't about Odysseus's journey back to being the king of Ithaca. This is about Odysseus's journey back to being Odysseus, back to being a good man.
Yeah.
And that's not what the original story is about either. Apparently in the original story, like, Odysseus doesn't really like have much more of an arc or like learn much of a lesson. I've heard from some people, or so, I guess that's some people's interpretation, but I'm like, I prefer the version where he realizes, like, this isn't about me reclaiming my kingdom. This is about me turning over my kingdom to my son, and hoping that he can do a better job than I did, because I think I lost the right to be the ruler of this place. And and I even liked one of these final lines where she says, why will the story only be passed down in songs? And he goes, because the songs will be all that's left to remember those of us who could read and write. And
Yeah.
that's the interesting thing too, when people talk about that the language is too simplistic or too on the nose, or it's like, that's the whole point, is that like most of history had to be passed down orally, and like in very simple terms that everyone could
Right.
understand, because like, here's the real thing, is like the literacy crisis is nothing new. We have always had a literacy crisis, and like understanding complex literature and language has always required like a heightened level of education and comprehension.
Right. Right.
And good storytelling should be something that can be understood by most people.
Right.
And I feel like he's even saying in this last line, like, the songs are the clearest way to keep it alive, you know?
And here's the thing too about that. I love that you brought that up. There is something amazing about writing eloquent dialogue and writing eloquent poems and using these most, the most beautiful words to express something. But there's also that same beauty in the simplicity of words.
Yes.
And the simplicity of getting things across. And I love you can love both. And this is a movie that does the simplistic route, which works for this film.
Yeah.
And it can be appreciated as well, which you have really, you've really pointed out for sure. So,
yeah. Should we get into scores?
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. We give scores on this channel out of 10, 10 being the best. We give scores for the technical achievement of the film. That's all the craft of the film. Removed from our subjective feelings, we give a score for the ending. We give a score for rewatchability. We give a score for cultural impact, and our subjective score. Kramer, what is your technical rating?
Technical rating is a 10. The fact that they shot, I mean, have you seen the cameras that they made?
It's insane.
It's insane. It's the blimp that they used to reduce the sound, because IMAX cameras are so loud. It's crazy what they were able to do. So the camera work, the acting, as we've said, the directing, everything about it, I feel absolutely deserves a 10.
Yeah, again, if this isn't a 10, what is? It's a 10 for me as well. Speaking of those Keeley cameras that they made, the custom cameras, they're all the different things they had to do, like build the mirror system so that actors could have good eye lines when they're acting in close-ups. But then there are things like I don't know if you were thinking about like when Matt Damon is running up the hill to the entrance of the Cyclops cave, and it's just this follow shot, like almost like a steady cam. And I was like, wait, how are they doing this? I was like, how are they taking one of these giant Keeley IMAX cameras with the blimp around it and following Matt Damon up this hill that he's running up? And I was like, well, I just was like, what are they doing? Is it on like a big, like a giant crane arm that's booming out, or
and they did have the smaller ones that were loud when they knew they didn't have to use, when they knew they were going to have to redo the sound.
Sure.
And I wonder if that was one that they used, but those cameras are still huge,
still so heavy.
And they did have a system. They showed that they were able to move. They were able to use the huge ones, the blimp ones. They had a system too that they could move it really quickly. So yeah, honestly, it's a huge technical achievement that they filmed everything. So
yeah, and everything in the movie. I mean, Ludwig Göransson's probably going to get a 4th Oscar. I mean, it's just,
he should. It's so good.
It's just top to bottom, really. I mean, it's these are the best people doing it right now, and it doesn't really get much better. So how about the ending?
The ending, I gave a 10. It felt so satisfying. It was a surprise. It tied up everything. It also really hit home on the theme. And this is the epitome of the hero's journey. Like, this is where it all started. This is everything. And it was executed so well. So it's 10.
Yeah, 10 for me as well. How about rewatchability?
Rewatchability, I gave a 10 just because it's so cool. It is long, and I get it if people would not want that. But I love movies that will reward you on the rewatch. And I really want to rewatch this again and again and again.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it again tomorrow. I'm giving it a 10 on the rewatch because I think that if like Christopher Nolan makes some of the most rewatchable films ever. Like that's one thing you can say about his filmography, is that everything is so incredibly rewatchable. And I feel like this movie is so dense with theme and story and action that like it will just always keep offering more and more as the years go by. How about the cultural impact of this?
Cultural impact, I'm giving a 10 because this is making an impact. This is one of these event movies that every year we have big event movies, right? But this is one that seems to be hitting everybody. And it's okay if you don't love this movie, that you can't please everybody. But this is huge. I think it's going to have a big impact on future filmmakers, especially I think it's going to have a big impact on film, celluloid film, because I think they're going to make more IMAX theaters. And, you know, Dune 3 was also filmed this way. So I think that it's going to be awesome to see that if I can on 70 millimeter. And I think it's just an extremely well-made movie. It's also, so it's Friday. We're recording this on Friday. And the movie, I just saw the box office numbers. It's projected to only drop 32%, which is like amazing. It's an amazing second week. And like, it's going to keep making a lot of money. Spider-Man's going to make a lot next week, but
this movie's probably going to make $1 billion.
It very well could. And, in our predictions, I predicted it would be a PG-13 movie, but it wasn't. But that doesn't really matter because people are really wanting to see it. So,
yeah, cultural impact. I got to give it a 10, especially for the moment that we're at. There's this story out there that Elon Musk is saying that he's going to have Grok make the anti-woke version, and it's going to be all AI, and it's going to be all white actors, and he's going to release a full-length version of the Odyssey that Grok makes, and I'm just like. I commented on, someone posted like a 3-minute long video that they made on Sea Dance or something that was like, oh, this is what it could look like. And I was like, when will you guys understand that it doesn't matter how close to reality you're able to make these images? We don't want it. Like no one is watching the Odyssey and going like, my favorite part is that none of it was real. Like it's the literal opposite. Like it couldn't be more potent at this moment to have a filmmaker go, the most important thing about epic filmmaking is to get as much of it in camera as possible and to make sure that it is as human made and as handmade as possible. That's what matters. That everything from Göransson's score to the costumes to the set pieces to like that everything is as real as we can get it. That we're actually shooting in the actual cave on Earth where Zeus was said to have been born. That's where they shot the cycle. They actually shot in the actual cave where, you know, legend has it Zeus was born. And it's like, that's why this works. And the fact that people don't realize that it's like, it doesn't matter how good you're able to get the image quality from AI. We don't want it. We want something that was made by people. And I feel like this movie is a huge, loud battle cry in defense of human made art.
Absolutely.
How about, I guess, you know, subjective scores?
Oh, it's a 0. It's
Hated
a 10.
Hated it.
Yeah, horrible. It's a 10. I mean, honestly, and this might not be my favorite Christopher Nolan film. Sometimes they get better, you know, with age, but it's still just everything about this movie is amazing. And the fact that Christopher Nolan has never made a horrible movie. You may not like his movies, but and this is also just like continuing with everything. And in our prediction, I said that he would kind of redefine the genre and make it more grounded and realistic. And I think that's what he did, while also still having those mystical, sequences and everything that still kind of works. I think he pulled it off, and it was such an amazing experience, such an amazing movie. This is kind of everything that everyone wants. And even though there are things you and I would probably love to see maybe differently in some aspects, he sticks to his guns and he does it the way that he wants. He accomplished the film that he wanted to make, and it's an amazing movie that I loved. So I couldn't give it anything other than a 10.
10 out of 10. It's a masterpiece. I think 2026 has been a killer year so far for movies.
And we're still got more, which is
we're
great.
Just getting started. Oh boy. We've got at least 3 or 4 left that are going to be bangers. I am not sure about that Doomsday trailer. I'll tell you, I am just like, I'm just like, guys, what are we even doing? What is it looks like a fan edit, like, especially coming off of the Odyssey and then watching something like that, where it just looks like a bunch of actors that were shot in green screen. And it's like, man, this looks like, it just doesn't look like a real movie. And I'm like, I don't even know what this is. I hope I'm wrong. But when I hold that up to the trailers for Dune 3 that have come out, I just am like, I mean, Dune 3 just it looks incredible.
It looks so good.
It looks so good. And
I just want to have a fun time with Avengers. I get it.
Yeah.
I agree, but I want it to be fun. But yeah, and especially after this movie, it's like, oh man, it's going to be very different. It could still be awesome. Let's hope it's awesome.
Yep. And kicking it off, we are going to be seeing Spider-Man here in a couple weeks. So to get ready for Spider-Man, we are going to watch Spider-Man No Way Home. So if, we're going to go back and kind of watch the where the Spider-Man story left off, maybe have a little conversation about the MCU's take on the character so far and what we think they're going to do next. And then we'll be watching Spider-Man Brand New Day. But so next week, if you want to watch along with the show, we're going to be watching Spider-Man No Way Home and commenting on that. And we'll see you then. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Yeah.
We'll see you later.